This is the Solid Signal podcast for the week of April 3rd, 2023. First things first, you might be noticing if you're watching this on YouTube, this is not a video podcast like it was last week. I tried that because I thought that it was going to perhaps get me some more exposure through YouTube. And guess what? I had half the number of YouTube views that I had the week before, so we're not going to be trying that again. It was annoying. It made me have to fix my hair before getting on the podcast, and overall it just wasn't the right solution for us. However, I have added a little bit of text to the slide that is behind the audio, because that's another thing that was suggested that maybe YouTube would like. If that doesn't work out, we'll take that out too, and we'll just keep kind of trying. Second thing I wanted to talk about before I got into the meat and potatoes of this week's podcast is a lot of you have come to me and said that the method that I have published on the Solid Signal blog for activating MLB.TV isn't working. And all I can tell you is this is the method that I've been told that it should work. And in the words of another bit of intellectual property, this is the way. And I will say it's not working for me either, but it doesn't surprise me because every year it seems like there are just a couple of hiccups with this sort of thing. It takes a little while for it to kick in. The good news is, of course, there was a free preview of MLB this past weekend, so you didn't miss out on anything. And hopefully by this coming weekend, it's all going to get completely taken care of. Okay, let's get to it. The subject of this week's podcast is who can you trust? This is a weird one for me because it's my policy not to say anything bad about anybody on the Solid Signal podcast, even competitors. And so it really comes down to it. Well, okay, how do I approach this subject? There are a number of companies out there that are using web addresses that have the words direct or dish or Wilson in them. And in some cases, these are legitimate dealers. In some cases, they are not. There's a couple of folks out there who have done an incredible job of making it look like their websites are actually operated by the manufacturers themselves. From a graphic design point of view, I give them huge credit for this. And it's often very hard to successfully mimic another website like that. There are usually a few tells that kind of come in, some sloppiness, but there are a couple of people who do that part really well. The real question is, do they do what they need to do really well? Are they really high quality dealers? And I guess what I would ask, rather than saying something negative, what I would ask is, why do they feel the need to imitate somebody else? Why do they feel the need to hide behind somebody else's intellectual property in order to try to get customers? See, at solidsignal.com, we don't do that. We've always been solidsignal.com, and we will always be solidsignal.com since 2002. And we have built our reputation on the internet one customer at a time. And that is why I have to tell you, and this is a point of specific pride for us, that we are the only company in the entire planet that is a DirecTV national accounts dealer, Dish Premier local retailer, and Wilson/WeBoost top tier dealer. There is nobody else who's got that. And we also have top accolades from a bunch of other manufacturers out there. And why? It's not because we paid them more money. That's not how it works. It's not because we move more product. There are some companies that will award higher status based on those. But it's because of customer satisfaction. The companies we deal with give out those badges to their partners who satisfy their customers. Number one in customer satisfaction. That's what they're telling us. That's why they awarded us DirecTV Dealer of the Year for 2021. It's not because we opened a certain number of accounts. It's because our customers stayed with us through thick and thin. And let's be honest, 2021 was a pretty thin year in a lot of ways. So when it comes down to trust, you really got to kind of ask yourself, are you going to work with somebody who is hiding behind the name of another company, or are you going to work with a company that's made its own reputation? back in 2002, when we first started the company, you know, 2002 was a very different time when it came to buying things over the internet. Back then, Amazon was brand new and they only sold books. That's how long ago it was. E-commerce was really, really in its infancy in those days. You had to do a whole lot of stuff yourself. There was no way to kind of work with standard profiles or anything like that, or even standard payment processors, because they didn't exist yet. And so every website had to make a decision. How do you attract customers? There were a few back then. For example, I think back to pets.com, which came on the scene with a great idea. You know, buy your pet food online and have it delivered instead of going to the local pet store. Still not a bad idea, and there are companies that do that today, but that particular company failed spectacularly. Why? Because when they did their advertising just wasn't that good. They didn't inspire trust. It didn't make people want to change their habits. So pets.com is long since gone, and solidsignal.com is still going strong because we haven't had fancy mascots. We haven't done Super Bowl advertising. We have invested every dollar that we can in improving the customer experience. You know, a lot of websites that have sales our size, really, they're very, very small organizations. You know, they just got one programmer and somebody else who is maybe putting up parts or something like that. Because you can do that today. You can just use off-the-shelf software and look like a much bigger store than you are just by kind of plugging some stuff in, and it's easy now. And you know, in the year since we started, we have taken advantage of a lot of those industry standard tools because they are better and because they are more secure for customers. But we have a lot of people behind the scenes, people who are working hard every day to make sure that our part listings are accurate, that we have experts who know what they're talking about, and that our people are there for you when you call, when you have a question, that we can take care of you. And that's really the Solid Signal difference. It's a difference you won't find from too many other websites. I mentioned Amazon.com before, and I had kind of pussyfoot around this a little bit, and I say it, and everybody, I assume everybody knows who I'm talking about. Amazon.com does not even have a published phone number. If you have a question, you chat with them, and that's it. Well, not only do we have a published phone number, 888-233-7563, he tried very slyly to slide that in, but we also answer the phone during East Coast business hours. And not only do we answer the phone, but we answer the phone from our corporate offices in Novi, Michigan. We have experts on the line. We don't send anything overseas, which is why we only answer the phone during East Coast business hours. We don't have script readers who try to just help you get through things using just the, pieces of paper or online documents that they have no idea what they mean. We have real trained people who are ready to help, and it does make a big difference. It's probably the biggest reason that we can call ourselves solidsignal.com and not Direct something or Dish something or Wilson something and still compete with those other guys. It just works for us because we have spent the time building that reputation. And it's something to think about. Now, I know to some degree I'm preaching to the choir. You're probably listening to the Solid Signal podcast because you're already a fan of Solid Signal or Signal Connect or one of the other divisions of our company. And I appreciate you for that, by the way. I really do. But when somebody comes to you and says, hey, should I go to this particular website or that particular website? After all, it looks like it's a DirecTV website. It looks like it's a Wilson website. Well, you can say with some confidence, I know these folks. I know what they do. I know why they do it. And you can trust them. Not only do they have a great name, but they don't need to hide behind somebody else's. That's about it for the podcast this week, by the way. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment anywhere you get your podcasts because it does make me look good to my bosses. Keep tuning into the Solid Signal podcast because I'm really committed to trying to do some tweaks that will hopefully increase some listenership this year. I am what they refer to euphemistically as a micro-influencer. I don't have millions of followers. My followers number in the thousands, and I'm glad for every single one of you. But all things considered, I wouldn't mind having a million of them or so, and that's why I'm doing these little tweaks to try to improve things. However, that is all I've got for this week. Tune in next week for another dose of fun, frivolity, and information here at the Solid Signal Podcast.